As you know, there were indeed, if I may categorize the events, unprecedented last Sunday, Sunday, um, to the extent where there was massive confusion in relation to the prisons, the inmates, the fires, so many things, the transportation, the hustling of getting a place to put those persons and managing to do that in a ground that was walled at Lusignan. The burning of the records, the created problems too, with numbers and names creating difficulties and challenges. And so we did come up with some figures as to how many people were indeed the escapees, but I am glad to report, and this could be verified by both Commissioner and the Director of Prisons, that indeed at Lusignan, though it was difficult, we have managed to ensure that what was in my original brief, that there were 8 persons that were escapees, we have now accounted for 2 more. So there is evidence that indeed 6 have escaped. This difficulty came around because when the calculation was being done and the numbers and the names were being called, we were not having the cooperation from the prisoners. And indeed, the verification process being more and more properly done as a result of the cooperation we are having now, and the fact also that we are removing prisoners from the Lusignan area to other prisons have helped in that regard, because the population in the walled area, let's use that term, is getting less. I want to say now that that is some positive in the sense that 2 out of the 8 have been accounted for. I want to state for the record and to correct the record, I think Stabroek News carried me this morning in a big spread that 300 have been released. That, for a variety of reasons, was a mistake. I don't know if it's a mistake on my part using the word released, but I remember the question being asked by Dennis Chibral as to how many people have been removed from the Lusignan for other places and so on. I indicated approximately 300. It is not that 300 prisoners have been released. Let me just go that through again. Not that 300 have been released. 83 persons have been removed to the Mazaruni prison. 90 have been removed to the New Amsterdam prison. 48 have been removed to Timeri prison. The early release that I granted total 57. The magistrate's release, 26 were placed on self-bail, and as a result, I think, of reduction of bails and the monies being found, an additional 8 found bail monies for their release, totaling 34. And that the amount that more or less have been the figure that I would want to give as having been removed from that area at Lusignan. Now I want to add that removed from that walled area into the Lusignan prison itself is an additional 151 persons. So a total out of the 1,000 and more that were sent to that grounded area there, walled area, is 463. So we have approximately 500 and more prisoners that are in the walled area, and the reduction is helping us in relation to the verification, as I mentioned. Now, out of that set that is in there, we are making accommodation for them in another walled area, that we have now tarmacked, and we are putting up sheds with roofs so that they can be in better conditions. Okay? I hope that is understood. So effectively, the people that were released are only amounting to the 57 that I have granted early release for good conduct, plus the 34 that the magistrates have granted self-bail for, and reduction of bails, I think, where they have found the money to now go, and they've gone. So 57 and 34, that's approximately 57 and 34 will be 91. Okay?
And Minister,
now,
just to add, the early release is within, they were within what period of their...
The early release was in relation to a period of a week to 1 month. So it is persons who would have ordinarily been released at the end of
First week in August.
first week in August. The first week in August. Under a certain provision of the prison rules, I have the power, a very wide power, to grant, on the recommendation of the Director of Prisons, early release, or earlier still release of those persons. And I have so done because a list came to me with 57 persons, and some would have ordinarily gone, yes, tomorrow, some would have ordinarily gone next week, and up to the first week of August. So to minimize the amount of people in there, in the walled area, that further 57, I've decided to give extra remission, it's called, under, I think, Prison Rule 259. And that is going to help the situation. Now, I've seen some criticism that that should not have been. Well, it's my discretion, and I've exercised it. Now, out of those that have been there, are still there, that will be about 500 and more. What we propose to do with them is to shift them across to the new walled area that will have the sheds and tarmac and washing area, better toilet facilities for them, and so on. And that, we feel, will be done by tomorrow, 24 hours from now, because we feel that the Infrastructure Ministry and its officials, along with the contractors that are doing this emergency work, will be completed by 12 midnight or thereabouts. And so tomorrow, we will then remove them into better conditions. Notwithstanding prisoners, they have certain rights. We have to keep them in certain conditions. And those who have been critical, stating that during prisoners, we have to give them the harshest of treatment, especially in the context of burning down a prison and all that. Please, we have our obligations in accordance to international protocols and national standards. And we're going to ensure that the conditions are met. Now, we have to also remove them because they're not going to be permanently placed there. But that removal from the Lusignan new area, tarmacked and shedded area, we are hoping that we can remove them from that area back to Camp Street once, of course, the debris is removed, because the structure in the new brick prison, which is standing there, can accommodate another 250 persons. So from that 500 plus, we will be shifting across to the new prison, brick prison. As soon as, of course, some rehabilitation work is done to that new brick prison, the roof was burnt, and we got to put on some zinc sheets there. We got to do the locking system. I understand that that will take about a week, approximately 7 days, because not only that, we have to do the kitchenette area that was badly burnt, and we have to do the trappings of an administration center, because you'll still need your prison warders to take care of that 250. The outer walls are all intact as far as the expert engineer's opinion and the fire chief opinion goes. And so that is why we will shift them within a week or some more time if it's required across there. There will be another area that is good enough, we feel, within a week's time to house another 100 in an area that is called the Cage. Okay?
Recreation Bay.
And the Recreation Bay. That area there, we feel, can house some more people. And that might be another 100. So we are trying to remove them from the Lusignan, out from the elements, back into the prisons, or into that Camp Street prison area. And so releasing the efforts and the insecurities in an area like where it will be at Lusignan. And I'm glad that we indeed are going very quickly in that area. That will more or less take care of my remarks in relation to what is happening there. On the manhunt front, I want to say that indeed an operational plan has been put up. I'll be asking the Commissioner of Police to speak more on that. Every effort is going to be made to catch those 6 now that have been photographed, and their photographs, I think, are all in the press. Those are the 6 that we are after. And the police joint services operation will be doing their best in relation to hunting them down to capture and bring them in. The other aspect that I want to speak about is the fact that indeed, I want to say, because there is a criticism that we have not done anything since the Commission of Inquiry, and a lot have been done since the Commission of Inquiry of last March. We have gotten the design from VICAB, that's the consultant that won the construction or the design of a new prison at Mazaruni. This was given and supported by the President since the 29th of June. I have supported it, the new design. It's going to be costly, but we wanted an area to remove the overpopulation of the more serious criminals to a safe place in Mazaruni. And that has started. I noticed that DPI did come out with some statements in relation to how much money was allocated for the first phase of it, $276 million. That will go towards the concrete structure, the foundation that is. And then next year budget, more monies will be allocated to carry it up. We want a 4-story building, but it'll take some time, the construction and all of that. We have to now put it out for bid, for contractors to bid as to who will build this thing. This will be a major, major piece of construction. But it will start as of this year, and I think my PS might be in a position to give me some more when that contract will be awarded. The modernization of our prison system was also a consultancy that was awarded to Dr. Trevor Hamilton and Associates, International Management Consultants. And that was delivered. The first question that was asked was in relation to selecting one from 5 options. Whether we privatize the prison system, whether we regionalize it, a combination of both, and whether we keep it in state hands with a board of governors. We opted for the governance structure to be in state hands with a board of governors. And the proposals are all here, and we have now even further that governance structure, along with the amendments that this new governance structure will cater for. And Mr. Duke Pollard is the lawyer that is working towards getting the amendments of our Prisons Act to accommodate the modernization of the GPS as a result of the consultancy that we got done from Mr. Trevor Hamilton, Jamaican expert. And so it is not as if we just sat back and did nothing. A lot was being done. And then, of course, that which Mr. Gladwin Samuels mentioned that were being done since the Commission of Inquiry made their recommendations. All of these things, however, cost a lot of money. We have to take care also of the consultants, the contractors, and of course the lawyers and everything that are going to, the persons who are going to be involved in this process. So I just want to make that clear, that lots of work were done to get this done for purposes of having safer and more secure place for our prisoners. And it is a major, major development that will cost major monies. It will take a couple years, I understand, for the construction for this building to be completed. And it might cost in the vicinity of $2 billion. A brand new prison to accommodate our 2,000 or more prisoners, as I have already said, would be in the vicinity of $6 billion, which we do not have. But we are accommodating, and it will be a phased thing, and that is what is being done, along with a more modernized governance system that will be taken care of by this consultant's report and the policies therein, and the advice that he has given, along with the management by Duke Pollard in relation to the amendments to our Prison Act to accommodate that. I will leave it there at this stage and open up now for questions. And whatever the questions, please direct it. I would want, in relation to the, if there are any comments that the Commissioner of Police would like to make in relation to that operational plan for the escapees.
The operation plan was a mandate of the National Security Committee that gives the joint services 4 broad objectives. One is security of the prisoners. 2, security of the prisons. 3, recapturing the escapees. And 4th is the
National security.
Or restoring order,
Restoring order
in the prisons. And so the joint services met, prepared those plans, which will be presented to the National Security Committee shortly. However, in the interim, we have, at the joint services level, we have already embarked on several operations that are consistent with the plan. And you would have noticed in today's news, joint operations between the police and GDF. Those operations were intelligence-led, and as we speak, there are intelligence-led operations to recapture escapees.
Adam Harris, Prime News. Sir, I have an interest in the system adopted by the prison service to keep records. Do you match prisoners to photographs? Are these records computerized? Are there backup systems at the prison's headquarters in Durban Street and in other parts of the joint services? I hear you talk about reconstructing records. What are you going to reconstruct?
All prisoners upon admission to the prison, they will be admitted with a warrant that will have some specific information as it relates to the person. A number is assigned to that person, and a photograph is taken, which will match the description documented on the warrant, the necessary information on the warrant. As it relates to computerization, I must say we have commenced that process. As it relates to the backup of that system, it is not as functional as it should be, but it is something that is budgeted for in terms of enhancing the capabilities. Unfortunately, all of the information we had stored would have been destroyed by the fire. We managed to save a large amount of the documented records. We have convicted and remanded records, and the warrants are also stored separately from the records. So we managed to retrieve almost 85% of the records And as we checked up to today, about 97% of the warrants. The warrants is a clear description of the person offense, age, and where the offense was committed and so forth. There are some biological data that we will capture from the person based on questioning and so forth. So as a result of that, once the warrant is there, the necessary records can be reproduced.
Just to add to what the Director of Prisons was saying, when a person's, the process that cause a person to be committed to the prisons is initiated by police filing a case. So there are records of those persons at the Guyana Police Force, and there are records at the court, being the magistrate court or the Supreme Court.
Minister, given what you've said on numbers with the persons you've released early and the persons that went through the judicial system, will you respond to the private sector's call to provide their names, make those their identities public? And on the Commission of Inquiry report, will that be made public also? Thirdly, you also mentioned the work in Mazaruni. That's a recommendation from the COI, and that work would start at the end of this year, but no monies were budgeted for that in 2017. So can you say where that funding will come from?
$276 million were budgeted for Mazaruni construction of prison, and 176 for the administrative building.
And works and those
And works, yes,
are ongoing.
all going. As a matter of fact, 12 houses are to be made for purposes of the 12 offices that we'll feel will be needed there for the expanded services for the prisons there. And 276 million was budgeted for the expansion at the first phase for the Mazaruni expansion prison. And yes, I will release the names. We have the names. The names.
We can do the names.
We can do the
No
names
address or the other information.
of the, I think it was 57 plus 34 or thereabouts.
Yes, Minister.
And yes, I have gotten in soft copy the Commission of Inquiry's report of March last year by Justice Patterson. I will release that too. The works couldn't get going because after we got the $276 million allocated, immediately we tendered out for the consultancy. And the consultancy for the design and the bill of quantities and the architectural design as we got here now in January. And in January, by February month, we understand that there was it had to be, because nobody satisfied the requirements, all right? And it had to be retendered out internationally now. And VICAB Trinidad firm, I understand, won. VICAB Civil Engineering won the award. And I think that retendering was done in March. And in March of 2017, after VICAB did it, got the contract for the design. Sorry, it was awarded in May because there was a retendering done in March. And in May, they came up in June, July here. I got this one. I got this in June. The 29th of June, I got this. And we had to pass it to the president. It was given to me. I passed it to the president. And we made some decision that, yes, this is good to go. And that money now can go towards it. We will have to do this. After this design, we have to do what is called, the procedure now is to go with specifications for contractors to build. And the specifications are all here now. The architect's design, bill of quantities, I understand, will be sent in by next week. And so that the documents for the contractors to make this thing will then be, it will be tendered out. And that could be done within another 6 weeks or so.
4 working simultaneously.
And 4 contractors we want to work simultaneously on this project because it's a major, major project that we want to be done at the fastest time.
Minister Dennis Shibral-Damrari, sir, could you tell us a bit more about the governance structure that is being contemplated and what amendments will be required, and also to either the police commissioner or the prison's chief. In your debriefing sessions, were you able to ascertain where were the police or prison guards outside at the time of the escape, and why weren't they able to respond to at least capture them either immediately or a short distance thereafter? And to the prison chief directly, what types of incidents have you had so far at the walled Lusignan area, and what has been done to at least minimize or prevent them from happening again?
Well, let me answer the question in relation to the recommendations that we adopted from Trevor Hamilton and Associates in relation to the modernization of the GPS. It is in this document here, largely it will be having a board of governors for the new prison that we're going to call it a correctional, is it correction?
Yeah, correction institution.
Corrections institution. We're renaming it. And the governance committee, it's a pretty complicated thing that are all, this is a recommendation for the institution and the enhanced governance and for the centralized thing. It will be owned by the government. We are not privatizing or regionalizing. The government will be the chief proprietor of this thing. We will have to fund it through our finances and all of that. The board, however, it will take the form of a board of governors that is going to be directing the management and administrative staff and all of that. It will come under, what's the ED? ED is the executive director. It will come under an executive director. And that is the administration of it. And all the jobs and the people and the qualifications that will come for a modernized system are all placed here. The qualification especially is important. The project officers, the research officers, the planning and resource mobilization officers, how many people are going to be there. It's a brand new system completely. The arrangements for the law as in the present Prison Act to be accommodating this new structure is being done by Mr. Duke Pollard. And I have asked Mr. Duke Pollard to complete his proposed amendments. And he said that he's going to finish that when? This month end. And how we go about, the board will go about getting these new employees and prison warders and what's the training for them. All of that is catered for in this modernization process. The salary scale and all of that. So it is something that is required, and I will be getting the amendments from Mr. Duke Pollard in a short while.
Minister, clarification. Will this new structure cater for a director of prisons, and is this system that has been proposed tested in any other jurisdiction?
Yes, it has been tested in other jurisdiction, and the Trevor Hamilton, which was the other jurisdiction? I understand there are some other.
Provide that subsequently.
We can provide that subsequently.
I have to answer it. The security on the perimeter of the Georgetown prisons were directed at prisoners escaping through the walls of the prisons and not on the front gate, which the prisons controlled. What happened on the day in question is that there were fires lit in the prison, in buildings of the Georgetown prisons. So there were several places where that were burning. The prison guards at the front gate, the prison officers at the front gate were overpowered, and the five men came out of that gate, headed down Camp Street, hijacked the car, and then 4 of them escaped in the car. The other one went back into the prisons. The officers that were providing security at the on the perimeter of the 3 sites was focused on what was happening in the prison and whether anyone will come over that fence. They didn't even notice persons passing them on Camp Street. That wasn't their focus, and it happened pretty quickly. So in the circumstances, it's understandable that they could have eluded the attention of those ramps.
What types of incidents have occurred at the wall area, and what has been done to minimize?
All right. We've had a number of fights not resulting in any serious injuries. All of the incidents we've had so far and that required medical attention was given on site. As I said, we had some fights. We had one prisoner who received some small cuts, which was as a result of a confrontation with another prisoner. And the most major incident we had there is one prisoner who was shot to his left hand after he was observed on top of the fence, which caused the guards to believe that he was attempting to escape. And based on our SOPs, it was at the appropriate time to engage.
Leroy Smith, Newsroom. Mr. Samuels, could you say how many prison officers were on duty at the time? And if there is any evidence at this point to suggest that there might have been collusion or a tremendous lapse within the system there that would have caused things to escalate so quickly. And Commissioner, could you say if the account of the taxi driver who was reportedly abducted, if his account of what transpired and where these men took him and so on, if that was double checked and so on. And Mr. Samuels, could you also say if the Loziknan Bartica accused or convict, if he was among the normal prison population, and why was that so? Added to that, and one final question, could you also say where new offenders, Minister Yu, could you also say if what system has been put in place for these new persons passing through the courts, especially for these very offenses that you guys are releasing persons for and so on?
In relation to new offenders, we are releasing, or the category of offenses they committed that we are releasing, we are hoping that the magistrates are going to grant bail or self-bail for those. Okay? So that to prevent them from getting in there. Because as you would see in the Commission of Inquiry report, the presumption of innocence and all of that is something that they should be taking into consideration. And releasing the persons because there is the presumption of innocence. And especially for those lesser offenses, they ought to be granting the bail that is going to be so reasonable enough that they could afford to pay. If it is a higher crime where bail is refused, they will have to go to Luziknan. There's not a place that we have.
Is it overcrowded at this point?
Well, come on, I've just given you the list of amount of people that we are trying to reduce, sending them to Mazaruni, sending them to New Amsterdam, sending them up. They will be there in the shedded area now, in the tarmac area. Because that's our prison really now.
As it relates to the amount of staff on duty, based on what I've checked, there were about 40 staff in total detail on the day. But at the time, I cannot verify how many were still on duty because the staff attendance book in which persons who mounted duty and when they're dismounting would be documented has been destroyed in the fire. As it relates to if there's any evidence of collusion, I cannot say at this point. I'm quite sure the police, in doing their investigation, will seek to determine if any such thing occurred. Royden Williams, the Bartica Luziknan massacre prisoner that you spoke about, was sentenced to death. He was housed in the condemned division in a separate cell. As I said at the first press conference, based on the initial information we received, which still stands, Royden Williams recruited or sought the assistance of other prisoners who assisted in breaking him out of the condemned division from where he made good his escape.
Commissioner, the taxi
Regarding the taxi driver is being treated by the police as a witness. There are certain things that happen during interviews. During his interview, there's no cause of concern. The second thing is, unless he would have visited that backlands before, he would not have been lying because he was pretty accurate with the geography.
How many weapons? One final question, please.
Follow.
How many weapons were recovered during that operation yesterday at Camp Street? I understand that there was an operation there to recover weapons from the armory.
All of the weapons that we had stored in our armory are accounted for. Well, some has been damaged beyond repairs, but as far as we are aware, the armory was not breached in any way. We had weapons in the operations room. We have a difficulty in terms of, again, the records there in terms of who signed and uplifted what is not there for us to do any verification, but based on what we have checked off so far, I think is only one weapon we're not accounting for, but this is still to be verified because I cannot tell if it is somewhere in the rubble because the ops room, which was 3 floors up, actually is now to the ground. So it could be somewhere in the rubble.
What type of weapon?
It's a pistol.
Right, and James Nightly News. Minister, just two questions. Can you say if there has been or will be an adjustment to the sentencing policy? That's one. And can you give us in dollars and cents the damages of Sunday?
Dollars and cents is hundreds of millions, I suppose. I can't give you that figure right now, but the buildings that you saw destroyed and the fact that all came down collapsing like that, I would say in the hundreds of millions of dollars. And the other question was in relation to sentencing policy. That is something that the judiciary and the magistracy has to do. And in accordance with I understand the former chancellor had gone a far way in doing some document in relation to a new sentencing policy document. I think that question will be far better directed to members of the judiciary as to whether that was completed.
Mostly a news source. Mr. Prison Director and Mr. Police Commissioner, could you say if the security guards mounted by the police outside the prison would regularly have communication contact with security officers inside the prison, the guards, the prison service guards, so they would know what's going on inside or what's going on outside? And could you also say what checks have been made at Lusignan since all these prisoners would have been moved there for illegal weapons, because we've seen them killing cow and all types of things in the pasture. So what are you doing to see what illegal items they have and what checks would have been made so far?
As it relates to radio communication, the Georgetown Prison Ops Room had the capacity to communicate with Central Ops Room Breakdown. So whatever had to be relayed would have been relayed through Breakdown Ops Room. There is also an alert system if there is a situation at the prison where we would sound the siren, which would prompt the ranks on the outside to know that something is going, and then more than likely they will get that communication feed from Breakdown Police Station. Now, as it relates to the searches, I must say that all those prisoners who have been transferred, they have been properly sanitized, but the situation on the ground as it relates to conducting detailed searches is extremely challenging because the guys are housed in a very large area, and based on our observations, because we have persons who have a bird's eye view of what is happening in there, they have they're burying some of the improvised weapons that they have in their possession. So it is difficult for us to conduct those searches in an adequate way because of the resistance we are getting from them. And I'm quite sure that it will not be a sensible thing to provoke a situation upon a situation. So at the appropriate time, the necessary searches will be conducted, and those persons will be rid of all contrabands that they have in possession.
The communication system outside, you know, on the inside to speak to a police officer on those four posts outside of the prison. Send it back to them?
We also have the capacity to hear those communications in the central upstream. So again, our upstream can then communicate to our staff as it relates to what the police on the outside communicated.
Looking back now, do you think a better system should have been in place?
There's also some towers where security is situated at the prisons, and they are also in contact with the guards on the intervention.
On the outside. So they too can relay the information quickly.
Follow up, Dennis?
Yeah. Quickly, Prisons Director, did those systems work, those various types of communication systems work on the day of the incident? And sir, as each prisoner is moved to another prison, is each of the prisoners checked for weapons and other types of prohibited items?
I will say to you that under normal circumstances, all prisoners leaving and entering the prison, they're searched. But if you take an assessment of what transpired last Sunday, it would have been impossible for us to, in a detailed way, search all of those prisoners. First of all, I think it was a miraculous job for us to be able to extract all of those persons from the prison, which was a major task. The next objective was to move them to a safe area. If we had to, at that time of the evening, go into processing
Each one of them, yeah.
all of them.
Not them, no. I mean, as you move them to the other locations, no.
Yeah, I said that just now.
Oh, yeah.
As they move, they're all being sanitized.
Okay.
They're searched before they go into the transportation, and then they're searched on arrival
At the new location.
Yeah.
And did the communication systems that you alluded to work on the day in question?
It did work, and that is what is responsible for the quick response of the various agencies.
Kurt Campbell, News Source. Mr. Samuels, could you update us on the recount of your duty officer, Mr. Trim, about what happened leading up to the incidents on Sunday? And could you also comment on the welfare of the other injured prison wardens? Because at least one family member has complained that they've not heard from the prison authorities.
Well, I'm not sure as it relates to which family member would have made that complaint. What I know is that the staff welfare officer was given a mandate, and she is executing that mandate in terms of making contact with all of the injured prison officers and their families, and we are offering the necessary support. I visited the hospital yesterday where I spoke to Mr. Trim, who, based on what the doctor said to me, is now out of the state of danger. I think it would have been very immature of me to ask Mr. Trim questions at that point. So, as his recovery progress continues, when Mr. Trim is in a better position to focus on what transpired on Sunday, I think it will be more appropriate to get whatever information Mr. Trim is in possession of.
Good afternoon, Zoe Fraser, Starbuck News. I have two questions for Mr. Prasad. The prison warder was shot 5 times. Is there anything at this point to suggest that more than one weapons were involved in his shooting? Do you know at this point which direction the escapees are heading? And in relation to Mr. Samuels, on the issue of compensation for the warder who died, could you speak to that, please?
Yes, that analysis has not yet been completed. I don't know that we have sufficient information to do that. He was shot in the back, which suggests that he was shot while he was running away, but they are witnesses to the incident, and at some stage they might be able to say whether one or more firearms was used. The footage that we have, we saw 2 handguns that they left with. The other question...
Direction that the escapees might be heading.
Well, 2 of them went to visit their mothers. They are now back in custody.
Talking about 6.
The 6, we know that 4 are together. And the other 2, we have reasons to believe that they are separate. They may be in Georgetown. The other 4, according to the driver of the car, should be somewhere in the backlands on the East Coast.
Well, as it relates to compensation, this is something that will be discussed at the ministerial, between the prison administration and the ministry. So I don't want to say further on that at this point because it is something still to be engaged in. However, we have some areas in terms of credit union. There's a welfare and benevolent fund. The committees have already been put together and they are currently looking at what is available for Mr. Wickham's family.
I want to make the point that it's arguable. Look, we have an ex gratia payment of $1 million to policemen that die in the line of duty. And I think a very meritorious case can be made here for prison officer Wickham. Is it still Wickham? Yeah. Wickham, to be paid that amount too. I will persuade my cabinet to give the family members that.
Just to follow up, sir, the $1 million that you spoke about, that was set like 10 years ago. Is there a possibility that that number could be reviewed?
I don't think so because of the fact that the state of our finances.
Good afternoon, Nicasia Logan, NCA News. Minister or Mr. Samuels, persons are being transferred to already crowded prisons. How are we dealing with security at those prisons? That's one. Two, how are families making contact with their relative, inmate, should I say, if there's anything set up for that? And the third one, maybe you can speak to the help or the support that you got on the night of Sunday night's jailbreak and fire, because I also saw CPG ranks out there and so on, persons who were ex-police, soldiers and so on.
I think that is the spirit of Guyanese. In times of crisis, we come together. There are so many ex-prison officers out there, ex-directors, ex-superintendents, ex-ordinary prison officers, even retired police that I know. So the support was very much forthcoming. And again, that resulted to the successes we managed to achieve the night. As it relates to visits, we have not re-established visits for persons of the Georgetown prison, whereby a mother or a sister or somebody can come and talk to the person face to face. However, we have put in place all those persons who are on self-support. We have recommenced the self-support procedure. We are also collecting on behalf of prisoners, where it is a process that is checked and verify the content as it relates to what is going in. We have staff dealing with that at the checkpoint, and all the items are being taken to the prisoners, whether they're in the holding area or they're locked in the Lusignan prison. Outside of that, we have a list of all the persons who have been transferred to the various locations. So again, since the media is here, persons can feel free to call 220-6492 to 94, and they can receive information as it relates to where those persons have been transferred, so that they can provide whatever necessities those persons might need. As we speak, I think by now the list is probably at the ministry or it is on its way, so persons can also make contact or check at the ministry, where they can be guided as it relates to the new location of their relatives.
In terms of security of those persons?
All right, we would have sent some additional staff from the Georgetown and prison headquarters to Mazaruni and New Amsterdam, and they are also being supported by members of the joint services.
There are persistent reports that rumors of an impending riot plot were out in the open. My question to Mr. Samuels, rumors of this plot was out in the open. Leading up to the prison riot, what steps were taken? Was any extraordinary steps taken to prevent Sunday's occurrence? And during your last press conference, you spoke about certain recommendations not being implemented because of finances. Could you specify which recommendations were these from the Commission of Inquiry report?
The thing is, since I can recall, even long before I'm a member of the prison service, it has been rumored that Georgetown prison is a ticking time bomb. So since then, measures are in place to prevent persons from escaping. But from all observations, the plan executed on Sunday seems to be one that was well orchestrated. So I think it is something that could have happened with the best plan in place. Yes, we always have systems in place to guard against such activities because our mandate is to ensure that persons remain in custody.
You see, look, the fire chief indicated that there were 6 fires that day. And with the best of plans, as the director is indicating, I don't know how we could have really managed that situation. And especially when prisoners knew that March gone, 17 of their comrades died, or their inmates died, and they still go ahead with this thing. I mean, I don't know how you prepare yourself for that, assuming, let's say, we had known now. It is your call or my call as to what the preparations would have been. Because you don't know, and in the difficulties of that scenario, what really could you have done? Who got the matches? Who was going to light up? And all of that. I don't know if we got all that information. So that is speculating in a realm that we ought not to go at this point in time.
If I could just add to that, you know, there have been a series of searches of these prisons over and over, all the time. And that's a huge action to prevent these things from happening. Finding weapons, finding items that they are not authorized to have, and so on. And as Mr. Samuel said, for the last decade, these rumors and information about prison breakout seems to be getting more and more frequent. So much so that you can't put an enhanced situation in place or response in place every day. It's almost every day you hear
it's
it.
a constraint.
Unless you change the prison officers, who might have been responsible for what happened there by smuggling weapons and implements into the prison? How do you scan them? Or do you ever scan them?
Well, there are a few that has been charged. Whenever we get evidence, they are being charged.
And some have been terminated. Their services have been terminated when the screen showed that they're carrying things that they didn't declare at, in their bags at the point of entry. And of course, they come and they cry and they make all kinds of, they want back their jobs and so on. But I don't know how strict a position we could have taken. But yes, there can be complicity, just like in every institution, we have our rogue elements. This was probably a case too that allowed them. What I know of is that some of them carried in cigarettes and so on for them. But as to guns and this sort of thing, I don't know. These are things, again, that will be speculative.
Gerald, follow up as we wrap up.
During your last press conference, you spoke about recommendations that cannot be implemented because of finances. So I was asking if you could specify what those recommendations were.
I think there was a misinterpretation of what I said. For example, one of the major recommendations was the relocation of the prisoners, which would require a new structure. I said then that the Mazuni prison is a work in progress. So if it was a situation whereby the government decided that they were moving to a new estate and construct a new prison, and then you move everybody from Georgetown or wherever to this new facility, it would have been different. But this is a situation whereby the old facilities are being modernized or enhanced. It therefore means that it has to be done in phases, because at the end of the day, we still have 2,250 odd prisons to house. We were already facing an adverse overcrowding situation, especially at Georgetown at the time. And that is why we avoided sending too many prisoners at the other locations, because outside of the fact that you will create another overcrowding situation, you will be sending some persons who are contaminated.
Cecilia, could you say maybe who are the four that are moving together?
Yes, it's Ryden Williams, Savory Alexander, Barswick, and the Amerindian, I don't remember his name.
Desmond
his photograph
James.
is in police case.
Desmond James.
Why was Barswick dismissed from the police force? I understand he was a former officer.
Yes, I can't see how far.
We'll provide that subsequently. Robin?
Robin Zingan, to the prison chief, sir, could you say if the security at the prison was adequate, at least up until Sunday? to the commissioner, could you say if security is being provided to the witness presently, given that he has shared information? And is
taxi driver.
The taxi driver. And in his testimony or his account of what transpired while with those prisoners is being treated as a distraction to mislead the force into believing that they're probably heading in one direction. They're not. And to the prison chief, finally, could you say if there were any reports of an unusually high amount or number of wardens reporting sick on Sunday?
If I may start with providing security for the driver, I was asked that question by a reporter, and I asked the reporter whether he saw a threat to the individual. They had him, according to him, in the backlands, where they're alone, and they didn't harm him.
But now that he has shared information
About their whereabouts, and
if it is indeed.
yeah, that was the follow-up question. Might have been you I spoke to. So is it something that is static? So someone that escaped will be in the same position all the time? I don't think so. And then they asked something, the reporter did say that now that they know their plans, and I ask again, would they share their plans with him? So from our perspective, there's no threat to him, and therefore there's no security that has been provided. The other question on whether this story is misleading, we don't know that. As I indicated before, we are treating him as a witness, and also that there is no concern of the investigators during the interview, and that his description of the geography is spot on. So he would have only known that because he's telling the truth, or because he would have went there before and know the geography.
The investigators went on the ground to walk back this trail. I mean,
And now we have something named Google. And we had during the previous escape a lot of operations out there. Ranks are still around. They know they went there umpteen times, so they understand. They know the geography.
Final response from Mr. Samuels before final response.
As it relates to a large number of ranks reporting sick that you asked about, I am not aware of that. And as it relates to the detail on the day in question, I think adequate is relative. Based on the staff composition of Georgetown Prison, the detail for Sunday was in keeping with the established strength, what we could have provided.